Chapter 4. The Death of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Just like Matsudaira, emperor of the Meiji Age, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, the heritage of the samurai, ended for good. On the night of 1955, marked by the Fadda and Gracie challenge, the Brazilian samurai honored their masters and did not bow to Jigoro Kano's judo, nor any other fighting style. The jiu-jitsu practiced in Brazil was the last remnant of jiu-jitsu from Japan itself, which, with great luck, was taught to us by the original jiu-jitsu teachers here in Brazil. If we are going to give the real understanding, not even the Japanese cultivated their own jiu-jitsu anymore. They fragmented the martial art into hundreds of styles that mischaracterized it from its roots. Kano's jiu-jitsu was the main substitute for such a move. The teachings of Maeda, Satake, Yano, Amori, Miyako, Nagashima, among others, had come to an end. Japanese jiu-jitsu gave its last breath on the night of January 21, 1955 in the Fadda and Gracie Challenge on Rio Branco Avenue, Rio de Janeiro. Brazilian jiu-jitsu was now on its own feet. After many years of the unusual saga of the Gracie family, which refused to respond to numerous invitations from the Japanese, and even some Brazilians, to switch to judo, and now with Fadda, with her jiu-jitsu also in the same attempt as Gracie, made the challenge remarkable in the ratification of sports activities in a jiu-jitsu that became definitively Brazilian. From then on, challenges between Gracie and Fadda students became more common. In public confrontations against other martial arts, they were highlights of the preliminaries of the main fights. There were always fights by representatives of Fadda or Gracie in the name of jiu-jitsu. Making the events promoted by the media, Fadda's jiu-jitsu become increasingly present and known to the public. On one occasion, when there was going to be a big mixed event, he had Fadda offer and make his students available to the Gracie Academy to defend the jiu-jitsu banner. Gracie was the reference in the invitation to the event with other martial arts. Fadda's support was published in the newspaper Democratic Fight on 28 December 1956. The closeness between the Gracie and Fadda family predated the Fadda and Gracie challenge of the 1955s. In 1948, Humbert Fadda, brother of Oswald Fadda, sent a telegram message to Master Helio Gracie saying, "In honor of the great champion, my son will be called Helio." The first and only son of Humbert Fadda, his name was dedicated to Master Helio Gracie. Helio Gracie was very grateful for the tribute and ratified his esteem for the family. Through Umberto's gesture, the Fadda family promoted an heir who marked the admiration of the Gracie family, clearly demonstrating loyalty to the family's goals in jiu-jitsu. A real heir of jiu-jitsu, in the junction of the names, Helio Gracie and Oswaldo Fadda would be eternalized in history through the name, Helio and Fadda. There was never a fight between Fadda and Helio. Both were fully aware that such a feat could compromise the basis of the implementation of the modality. For this reason they tried to develop their students and put them to the test in competitions. In this way adapted techniques and jiu-jitsu emerged. Brazilian developed naturally. Academies expanding to the West Zone, increasing the circle from the North Zone and the outside of the state. In 1960, with the visible growth of the name Fadda Jiu-Jitsu, Oswaldo Fadda together with his and older brother Umberto, decided to open the first branch of Fadda. At Suburban Avenue and Square 10.033, the Fadda Academy is founded in the Cascadura neighborhood. Both academies develop their social work, but with the vision of expanding and disseminating sports jiu-jitsu. Umberto Fadda, a veteran of the military service, having reached the rank of captain, used all the resources saved from his retirement to invest in his brother Oswaldo's dreams, because what Umberto really wanted to do was open a record store. But Fadda convinced him otherwise, inducing Umberto to safeguard the future of the Fadda Jiu-Jitsu system. Helio Fadda, who was everyone's hope for the continuity of the work carried out within Jiu-Jitsu. The Fadda branch in Cascadura was already preparing the future of the lineage through the genetic representative, Helio Fadda, whose name already demonstrated an interest in perpetuating the history of the Fadda family, just as it was in the Gracie family. Helio Gracie and Oswaldo Fadda dedicated themselves to the development of the sport, studying movements and improving them. In competitions, they consolidated the newly born Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for sports practice. Jiu-Jitsu was therefore going through a structuring phase. Extending its roots to the most diverse points, Gracie was no longer alone, and in this way the sport gained a greater radius of action. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu already had several academies spread across Rio de Janeiro, and needed to create its own regulatory entity. That's because at that time there were no specific regulatory bodies for Jiu-Jitsu, and all athletes and academies signed up with the Boxing Federation as a way of at least being registered with some similar entity. Academia Fadda has always been present at the most important events in the construction of art, along with many of its students and representatives of the Gracie family. They decided to continue their independence, seeking to meet the objectives of legal sporting recognition of the martial art Jiu-Jitsu. From 1963, Fadda and Gracie were fundamental pillars for the creation of the Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the state of Guanabara, the first sport entity founded aimed objectively at meeting the needs of regulating the sport. Helio Gracie was its first president, and supported by other influential figures in local society, he achieved official recognition. The federation that would be constituted took its first steps making the regulations and graduation systems, being really founded around 1967. It focused on sports competitions as a marketing strategy carried out by Associação Suburbana de Jiu-Jitsu. This one, commanded by Fadda, but with the personal and direct presence of Helio Gracie. The 1970s were the most important for this dissemination. Already in the 1980s Jiu-Jitsu was widespread. But the peak was the 1990s, which we will discuss shortly. Rio de Janeiro, in the 1960s, was still the capital of Brazil, and in the transition from the capital, Oswaldo Fadda and Helio Gracie reorganized Jiu-Jitsu to found FJJ Rio, Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the state of Rio de Janeiro, originated from the Federation of Guanabara. Therefore, being the continuity of the Guanabara Federation, the FJJ Rio is the oldest body recognized and historically referenced in the culture of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Its presidents were Helio Gracie, founding president. In the early 1990s, Álvaro Barreto as intervenor, and currently Carlos Robson Gracie, Helio's nephew and son of Carlos. In the reorganization of the federation, we highlighted a fundamental character who served as a link between Fadda and Gracie for the creation of strong and solid entities. We refer to Master Munir Salameo Devi, a Fadda student who actively worked to stabilize the entities and relationships between Faddas and Gracie academies so that all academies in Rio, whether Fadda or Gracie, were united. Munir was a very good friend of the Gracie family as well, and had under his command dozens of academies that brought together hundreds of athletes, mostly children and teenagers. Thanks to Munir, Jiu-Jitsu became part of the tournaments for younger audiences, children and teenagers, since for the Gracie Academy girls and children were not the focus for sports competitions. The competitions of entities in Rio de Janeiro, with strong and well-defined entities, accelerated the process of diffusion of Brazilian sport Jiu-Jitsu to other states of the country. In the states of Minas Gerais, pioneer in the process, and Espírito Santo, the first entities were founded that followed Rio de Janeiro in the same initiative and concepts of the regulations. From 1980 onwards, in addition to FJJ Rio, in Rio de Janeiro, in 1982 the Liga Niteróiense de Jiu-Jitsu, lineage, current Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the state of Rio de Janeiro, FRJJI, led and organized by phenomenal couples Silvio Pereira and Aunt Marlene. Both administration professionals and physical education professionals saw in Jiu-Jitsu a good opportunity to put into effective practice their academic concepts and administrative management of the sport as a more elaborate organizational tool. Silvio helped a lot in drafting the statutes and legality of what would become the Confederation in the future. With the support of all the academies in Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais and Espírito Santo, and later Sao Paulo with their respective federations, he made Jiu-Jitsu grow by leaps and bounds. The disputes between them collaborated with the first interstate organized championships that would focus on the Brazilian. From the championships emerged great and recognized champions who strengthened the pillars of Jiu-Jitsu entities in their respective states. All these efforts would provide the basis and strength to create a confederative Jiu-Jitsu entity in Rio de Janeiro and federations in many other states, finally international entities. Throughout this path, the gesture of respect and friendship of these two segments is reflected until today, through the members of both lineages. We quote with great reverence the great Gama Filho University, which with its popular way of giving academic and intellectual support to all sportsmen, sheltered dozens of Gracie and Fadda students, together in the same intent. Gama Filho University, which had its own Jiu-Jitsu team, and gave rise to the famous and renowned Jiu-Jitsu team GF Team. Grappling Fight Team. The GF Team is commanded by one of the noblest and best students of the renowned master Munir Salameo of Fadda BJJ. We are talking about Julio Cesar Pereira, Master Julio Cesar, who, together with his renowned teachers, is responsible for the most recognized and famous sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu team from the Fadda Academy around the world. The participations of the GF team and its members stand out in the professional preparation of national and international academies and sports entities. His team is always in evidence wherever Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is presented. With branches in several countries around the world, GF team is a great reference for Brazil. In the early 1990s, the strength of the Jiu-Jitsu federative entities was full. The great milestone that propelled this worldwide recognition were the consecutive victories of Royce Gracie, who in the UFC Ultimate Fight Championship, an event created in the United States by Grandmaster Rorion Gracie, son of Helio Gracie. Now the world knew about Jiu-Jitsu coming from Brazil through the glorious Gracie family. Really, maybe if it weren't for the Gracies, the world wouldn't know about our Jiu-Jitsu, nor the Fadda family. The Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the state of Rio de Janeiro was further boosted by Royce's accomplishments in the UFC with a view to stabilizing the conduct of the sport. Foreseeing the inevitable success of Jiu-Jitsu, FJJ Rio, a year before Royce's feats, had already promoted a major graduation event and belt recognition. At this event, already at a certain age, Fadda was highlighted along with Helio Gracie due to the great importance and historical achievements in the implementation of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Oswaldo Fadda, our Grand Master, was the only non-Gracie, along with the Gracie members and Gracie founding brothers, who received the title of Grand Master Red Belt 9th degree when such title was created, truly demonstrating that Fadda and Gracie had different roots of the same Jiu-Jitsu. Helio Gracie and the other graduates recognized Fadda's achievements, and because he was not a Gracie, the possibility of not being a graduate crossed Fadda's mind. But in the case of Fadda, Helio could not leave him out of such a noble position. A Red Belt Grandmaster, just like him, demonstrating to the world once again that Jiu-Jitsu was not exclusive to the Gracies. Remarkable day for the history of Jiu-Jitsu. Helio Gracie and Oswaldo Fadda photographed side by side with their respective red belts, Grand Masters of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There are many Fadda descendants in Brazil and in the world, but Bento Ribeiro's Fadda Academy is the story physically described in the foundation of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Fadda Temple is located in this place, serving as a base for studies and meetings for all practitioners of the lineage and also for many other segments that, along with Jiu-Jitsu, find their references. Among many Faddas in history, there is recorded in the grade of Grand Master, 9th grade Red Belt, a single living genetic descendant of this era. A student who was born at the Fadda Academy, and received directly from the Grand Masters Oswaldo Fadda, Humberto Fadda and Chandu, all of his Jiu-Jitsu teachings since his childhood. We reference the Grand Master Helio Fadda, on whom our entire history was based. Helio Fadda, name that honors the two families of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. As mentioned above, he was directly responsible for continuing the story of his father and uncle. Soon, still young, he was at the side of his uncle in the most important conquests for the dissemination of Fadda's Jiu-Jitsu. He represented Fadda in the countless fights on the show Captain Hurricane on Globo TV, among other public challenges, including against members of the famous family of Valdemar Santana. Helio Fadda received Oswaldo Fadda's incentive to study at the university, attending the Higher School of Physical Education. Oswaldo Fadda, intended to give greater stability and pedagogical academic projection to his Jiu-Jitsu system. Oswaldo Fadda directed Helio Fadda to the academic sports reference of the time, the famous and renowned Gama Filho University, also in the suburbs of Rio de Janeiro, to study physical education. Helio Fadda, following Oswaldo Fadda in his military projection, served the Brazilian army as a military paratrooper. The paratroopers, the elite of the military fighters, as well as Marines in the Navy. As we highlighted in previous chapters about Oswaldo Fadda's incentives in the military career, Fadda understood that discipline and hierarchy were also the foundations of his Jiu-Jitsu, and he directed young people as a way of continuing his patriotic and disciplinary teachings. Master Helio Fadda is extremely active in Jiu-Jitsu, one of the few masters who has graduated and is recognized in all federations and confederations as Grand Master of Jiu-Jitsu Red Belt 9th degree. Helio Fadda teaches classes and seminars in several academies throughout Brazil, trains, plays, fights with his students and participates in social events that involve the projection of Jiu-Jitsu Fadda. At Academia Fadda de Bento Ribeiro, the photo of Helio Gracie and Oswaldo Fadda at an advanced age, embracing, shoulder to shoulder, wearing their red sashes, is the main highlight in the center of this historic academy. The graphic image of the respect and friendship between Fadda and Gracie is revered by all who know the true origin of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Hilinho, as he is called by all his friends and students, named his son Helio Fadda, also called Suxo. Suxo is a renowned Jiu-Jitsu black belt teacher. An unusual fact is that Master Helio Fadda did not promote his son to black belt, but through the Gracie-Fadda Academy. Due to his great friendship with Roy Gracie, son of Helio Gracie, he allowed Roy Gracie to grant the title to his son, giving continuity to the entire previous process of esteem, since for Master Helio Fadda the recognition of the Gracie family was as important as his own name. At Joao Vicente Street, N-squared 1.191, Bento Ribeiro, Helio Fadda directs the same Fadda Academy of Bento Ribeiro that his family founded in 1950. Helio, who is present every weekend, gathers his team and guests for get-togethers and open visits to the historic academy. Supervises all academies in Brazil and in the world, promoting and projecting the Fadda Jiu-Jitsu system, the purest and most faithful Jiu-Jitsu taught in the same style as Grand Master Oswaldo Fadda himself. Finally, we emphasize that this work was based on information and historical studies carried out with the intention of only providing greater knowledge about the trajectory of Oswaldo Fadda and his Jiu-Jitsu. We never intended to own the truth, nor to cause discomfort to anyone who feels disturbed by our history. This is Fadda Academy view about the Jiu-Jitsu history, and as much as we try to get it right, it could be that something or other has been overlooked or reported in a discordant way. This is not our intention, and in the face of all this we already apologize for any inconvenience. We finish this work certain of the mission accomplished, and of the real intentions of all the members of the faithful and historic Academy of Bento Ribeiro. On behalf of the Grand Master Helio Fadda, we thank all those who were with us until the end of this humble work. Now a surprise, a message for the great Master Helio Fadda from all friends and students.
Helio Fadda, this one was for you, my brother. You are a fantastic friend, teacher, and brother. It is an honor for all of us to have the opportunity to tell his story and his jiu-jitsu. May God give you good health to put up with us. You are a living example of humility and kindness, a man who leaves his story recorded through our lives. Thank you so much for everything.